Okay? Today our lesson is on Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream. We're going to start out looking at the language that Shakespeare speaks, and then we are going to investigate some contemporary phrases that actually originate in Shakespearean plays. Then we will move to a performance activity. Okay, starting out here, this is from Taming of the Shrew. The little picture here, I would like you to just shout out if you know what the word or phrase would be on this.
Break the ice.
Break the ice. You got it. Okay, let's try a harder one. You're really a good crowd. All right, from Much Ado About Nothing, Beatrice told Benedict, I would rather do this than hook up with you. What's the issue there? First word's catch. Catch a cold. Okay. Let's go to the next one. All righty. This is from The Tempest. Things were looking pretty rough for the people in The Tempest, and they were in a pickle. All right. Let's move on. Okay. All righty. Anybody who has a son in their house understands this one perfectly. From Henry IV, Part 2. He has a kid that eats us out of house and home. Okay, Merchant of Venice. This is one of my favorite plays. And many times we say this, particularly when women are getting engaged and they're looking at the ring. And what if it's cubic zirconia? Okay, all right, then what must be the band? Oh, righty. So what are we doing talking about gold here?
Gold digger?
Oh, gold digger's a good one. Okay, I like that one.
All that glitters isn't gold.
All that glistens is not gold. Good job. I get to get an A for the day here. All righty, now this one's a little tricky picture. Nope, you can't cry over spilt milk. That's close, but that's rather contemporary. We're going to talk about Lady Macbeth. Everybody knows Lady Macbeth. She's a real honey, isn't she? She is the milk. The milk of human kindness. Very good. You must have been studying Macbeth. Or remembered my last presentation, but I won't tell anybody that one. Okay, all right, King John, no hints on this one. You need more space.
Elbow room.
You get elbow room, right. Okay, Hamlet.
Oh, dressed to kill?
No, how about a well-dressed man? Okay, all right. So we've got Hamlet's well-dressed man. Now we can't move our man. Okay. All right, Othello. Wearing the heart on the sleeve. Okay, Midsummer Night's Dream. No, Wachowski wasn't there. But he's the green-eyed monster of jealousy. Okay, in Shakespeare's plays, the course of true love never does run smooth, and language gets a bit difficult. Shakespeare was actually born in 1564 and lived till about 1616, so we're encompassing the British Renaissance or the Renaissance England. What language did we speak in Renaissance England? Old English. You know, it was old and it was English, but actually it was modern English. All right? Modern English actually started picking up some words because during the Renaissance we were making technological advances. One of the technological advances, I have trouble with technological advances, was the printing press. And so in 1604, they published the first English dictionary. Now, this is quite a momentous occasion because it's kind of like he who dies with the most toys wins. And so whoever publishes the dictionary determines the fate of the language and why we speak English, or actually who wins the war and who doesn't win the war. But if we're looking at Old English actually was spoken, and it comes out with Chaucer. and the upper classes spoke more of a French. When we get to modern English, all of the classes are now speaking the language, or pretty close to the language that we know today. The modern English is also a period of the great vowel shift, where we're starting to pronounce vowels. All right? Now we get back to what Shakespeare and what vowels Shakespeare is pronouncing. Shakespeare had a word or a phrase for every occasion possible. And so when the course of true love doesn't run smooth, Shakespeare has some words to share with us. Okay? In Midsummer Night's Dream, we have a very exciting plot where a father demands that his daughter marry the man of his choosing. Daughter Hermia needs to marry Demetrius or go to a nunnery. Okay, Hermia doesn't want to marry him. She wants to marry Lysander. However, Hermia's best friend Helena wants to marry Demetrius. Well, anyway, the couple elopes, and that would be Hermia and Lysander. And then the best friend sees that Demetrius is coming to look for his bride-to-be because he wants the inheritance and do what the father says. So the best friend goes to the woods. Now the lovers are in the woods, and all of a sudden, the fairies intervene. Now we have a well-meaning fairy named Puck. Puck wants to get, let's see, if we fix up Demetrius and Helena, and then Lysander and Hermia can go off, I just need some pixie dust. All right, Puck sprinkles his pixie dust, and guess what? He gets the wrong groom. I'm going to show you a film clip of what happens. I want you to pay very close attention to the language and see if you can pick a new word for your vocabulary. All right. Did you hear any great words? Maple. I love maple. I take that one personally. Okay. We have passed out activity sheets. And our group activity, should we be dividing, would be that we break into small groups and we create a script that would be similar to this script. Okay? Then I would have each person write 5 lines. You take one word from each column on the script, and you put it into the blank line, write 5 sentences. Now, in order for you to understand this activity, I have a volunteer from the audience who's already done his homework. So let's see how this works. Again, we're taking one word from each of the columns, and we are creating script. Lysander, hit it.
Be certain, nothing truer. 'Tis no jest that I do hate thee and love Helena. Thy quailing head's born flirt gill.
Oh me, you juggler, you canker blossom, you churlish thief of love. What have you come by night and stolen my love from him?
What would you know of a method to my madness, you puny poxmarked scut?
Fie, fie, you counterfeit, you elf-skinned puppet, you mugger-hugger, you.
Catch a cold, you weedy, fen-sucked giglet.
Aye, that way goes the game, you goatish, milk-livered, haggard maypole.
Thou art spawn of rudish, ill-natured hedge pig.
Thou art a saucy, idle-headed wagtail.
Give elbow room, for I wear my heart on my sleeve, you fawning, fat-kidney flax wench.
Thou art a saucy, wag-headed wagtail. Get you gone, you fawning, fat-kidneyed flapdragon. Okay, can you write it? Thank you very much. All right, okay, so the assignment is everyone has to think of an Elizabethan period situation. What would you say if your father told you you had to marry someone you didn't want to? What would you say if you're sitting in the pub and someone flirts with your bar wench? Okay, so you pick a scenario, you write the dialogue, and we'll act it out together, and I will see you at the next Tony Award. Thank you.
All right, let's take a look at this. Now, if you want to connect with me while this is playing, you can use the back channel. Here you go. Some of you remember this from the 70s? Remember this? Now, I'm expecting some singing along. And this is the syllabus in case you haven't gotten your copy of the syllabus here. Notice how happy we all are here back in the 70s? Yeah. Okay, you ready to do some singing? You know it. Come on. No other more perfect union. We're all so happy, and this is awesome. We agree, we love each other. It's amazing. We're all so happy. Well, so how do we go from that to this?
Hi, I'm a Democrat.
And I'm a Republican.
One of us makes stupid policies, and the other makes evil policies.
That much is true.
But now we want to bring America into a new era of bipartisanship.
We recognize your shortcomings. And now we want to work together.
By combining our stupidity with our evil, we can bring America real change.
Yes, we can.
We are now ready to move America into a new era of stupid evil policies.
Finally, change we can agree on.
Or this?
We have a two-party system. The Democratic Party, which is a party of no ideas, and the Republican Party, which is a party of bad ideas. And the way it works is the Republican stands up in Congress and goes, I got a really bad idea. And the Democrat says, and I can make it shittier.
Oh my gosh, one minute we're really happy, the next minute we're not. I mean, we're divided. What the heck happened? Well, as you know, we've been working through the course this semester. What we've been trying to figure out is that actually that's asking the wrong question. And so what we're going to be moving into this next unit with this introduction to this unit is the idea that actually that's a myth. And particularly as we go into the voting season, we need to kind of keep that in mind as we're looking at what our political parties are saying. Actually, you know, there really never was this once upon a time that we were all really happy. It doesn't really work out that way. And so we've never really agreed. And so that's why we've been seeing that through the unit. And what we're going to be doing in this next unit is, that's why we look at this next unit, we call this next unit Splitting the Founding Brothers. All right, so we're kind of working our way forward and trying to see, as we come out of the Constitution, what exactly happens to the Founding Brothers. Now, take a look at this. You guys remember we've kind of seen some of this before, that when we first started off, we were all happy colonists. Now, to be fair, there should be 13 lines kind of coming together, because as we've talked about, the 13 colonies were each fairly independent of one another. But for our sake, we're saying that they were all together, they're all happy, and then, of course, they became unhappy. They became unhappy because of a decision with the government. And they split into two groups, those who loved the government, those who didn't love the government. You remember this, we've already covered this ground. And as we found out that what happened is the revolution was fought, sure enough, one side lost, and they basically disappeared from our story. So once again, we're all really happy. Yay! Except, no, we're not. Because the first government, as we looked at, the Articles of Confederation, it also ended up in a place where we began to kind of split ourselves into two groups. And those who had all been amongst the patriots now were in two separate camps. On the one side, you had the anti-federalists. On the other side, the federalists. And these are all really famous names. I mean, you know these people. They write the Federalist Papers. There's George, James Madison. There's Hamilton and Franklin. And these guys are opposing some pretty heavy hitters, as we saw there. And ultimately, as we looked last class, the Constitution comes to fruition, and the anti-federalists, they lose and largely disappear from government. I mean, we're talking about some famous names here. Thomas Paine, but you don't ever hear him ever again. He doesn't die. He just loses out. Right? And so then what happens is they split, and this title from Joe Ellis, the Founding Brothers, it gives us a hint as to what the debate really is about that we're really trying to work on. And that's what we're going to be seeing in this coming unit. And that debate is, what does it mean to be in a republic? That's their aim. They want to create a republic. They don't want to do a democracy. They don't want to do a monarchy. They want to avoid kind of snob rule. They want to avoid mob rule. So they want to create a republic. But that's not very clear to them, even as they're creating it. And one way you can think of how this is going to be decided is this question here. Who exactly are the founders? Are the founders the men who wrote the Declaration? Or are the founders the men who wrote the Constitution? This debate between these two groups and how you view what is the founding document will become central to what the founders are trying to establish and the fight that they're going to have over this next 15 years. Now, another way to deal with this is to think about how do we view who is kind of the founding philosopher. On the one side, you have John Locke. John Locke wrote in his first and second treatise of government the idea that, people are basically good. And so we don't need a real heavy-duty government. We need a limited government who's going to just basically keep outliers from going crazy. But we don't want you to do a lot of stuff. Opposing him, of course, as we saw earlier in this semester, is Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes writes in Leviathan, you know what? People really aren't as good as we think they are. And quite honestly, they're a little self-centered. We say selfish, that's kind of a word that has moral baggage. So just think about self-focus. We're focused on what we want, what's best for us. And because of that, it can lead to conflict between us. So Hobbes says what we really need is a strong central government. Now, yes, of course, he writes about a monarchy, but it's the wrong thought process to say, oh, Hobbes is interested in monarchy. Now, then our two documents support this. On the one side, the Declaration of Independence comes out and says that's what Locke thinks. On the other side, as we've just seen, the Constitution supports Hobbes and says, look, ultimately we need to establish a stronger government. And that's going to be the question about which the debate, these two founding documents are going to lean in opposite directions. As you listen to the founders, you'll see that this is their own discussion. How much do we trust each other? What should we do with government? Now, to watch this video clip, in this clip, there's Thomas Jefferson.
In Philadelphia, they are
There's
to
Ben Franklin.
discuss a binding constitution. I hope to attend for me to have an effect on the style of its prose.
And John Adams. And they're discussing this idea of a new government.
I expect that any constitutional document that emerges from Philadelphia will be as compromised as our Declaration of Independence. I am increasingly persuaded that the earth belongs exclusively to the living, and that one generation has no more right to bind another to its laws and judgments than one independent nation has the right to command another.
But surely the Constitution, as it did with the ones we wrote for our own states, is meant to establish the stability and the long-term legality essential to the continuation of civilized society.
Yes, possibly. But I fear it could prove a breach in the integrity of our revolutionary ideals, through which will pour the forces of reaction.
So did you catch that last part? Forces of reaction. What Jefferson's concerned about is what Adams is hoping for. Adams is hoping that through the establishment of the Constitution, that there will be a space, he'll say that in just a second, a space that protects civilized society. What Jefferson's thinking about is, for him, the founding document of the country is the Declaration. And so in that area, he says the Declaration allows it to be free. With law, forces of reaction. Well, for him, that means a monarchy. He's really talking about the idea of a centralized government. Too strong of a government can be detrimental, in his opinion, for civilized society. This debate between these two men, which happens in 1786, will be the core then of what we see dividing the founding brothers. All right, so let's hear what Adam says next. And don't forget to listen to the very end about their views on human nature. It's critical.
Dr. Mr. Jefferson's pet topic is not the artful arrangement of political power, but the cordoning off of a space in which no power exists at all. You, sir, you are a walking contradiction.
You're all contradictions, Mr. Ray.
Indeed, yes. And what is government, ultimately, but the putting into effect of the lessons which we have learned in dealing with the contradictions in our own characters?
You have a disconcerting lack of faith in your fellow man, Mr. A, and in yourself, if I may say.
Yes, and you display a dangerous excess of faith in your fellow man, Mr. Jefferson.
My online students find that very useful. Again, if you want to check with me, talk to me about some questions you might have, you can give me to the back channel. It's also in the syllabus that I gave you. You have a dangerous level of faith in your fellow man. You're too much of a lock-in, Mr. Jefferson. Well, you have a disconcerting lack of faith in your fellow man. You're too much of a Hobbesian. So he's concerned about how this is going to work out. And this then becomes this question of how much power should the federal government have? It's this question then that will embrace our first two administrative groups, at Washington and Adams, and it will lead to our first political parties. Now, what are they going to debate about? Well, pretty much the same thing we debate about now. Check it out. Domestic policy, foreign policy. These are the same things we deal with right now. The exact same issues. The specifics, which we'll talk about in the next couple of class days, are right here. These 10 things under Washington's administration are kind of what focuses him. Adams will have another 6. We'll introduce you to those when we get to that part in the unit. But these questions are going to divide the founding brothers into these two groups. So let's back up. Here's where we can see the splits kind of working out here. You can see up here is where we begin a part after the Revolution, down here over the Constitution, and then down here is where we're seeing the question here. So we see this split kind of work our way through, and then down here we end up with these two, Republican and Federalist, our first political parties. You can see who's heading them. You might think, wait a minute, where's Washington and Adams? Well, they're going to abstain from being in either group. They're going to see the leaders should be above this. Alexander, Hamilton, and Jefferson will be the ones who ultimately kind of drive us forward. And as we will see over the next two class days, what they'll be debating is this: where should governing power be? The state level or the federal level? What should government be? Hamilton will say government should be energetic, constant, doing things. Jefferson says the best government is the government which governs the least. They're going to have a southern and northern focus. Keep in mind that they are both national parties, but they're going to lean one way or the other, and that's because of what they view of wealth. The Republicans are going to hold the old view, Lockean view, wealth is land. The Federalists are going to move in the other direction, that money is actually what wealth is. And that will also reflect in their view how the government should, or the country will be established. The Republicans are going to stay in an agrarian view. The Federalists are going to move to kind of the future of America, a more industrial viewpoint. And ultimately, they're going to lead in their international relationships to France and England. And the big question, which we'll talk about when we get to the National Bank, is the issue of how do they define the government as far as the Constitution goes. The Republicans say it's very strict. The government can only do what the Constitution says specifically they can do. The Federalists are going to say, no, it's kind of quite loose, actually. You can do pretty much what you want as long as it's not prohibited by the Constitution. This debate I would offer is something that we're still debating in 2012. All right, now let's kind of go back to here. So what we're saying is we're going to see the debate about how much power the federal government should have, and that ultimately will show up here in these outcomes as we walk through the next couple of class days. We're trying to see, as we walk through, what is the splitting of the founding brothers. And that, my friends, is going to be the introduction to our unit, and I'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much.
All right, well, welcome everyone. I missed a lot of you yesterday. Were you at the trick-or-treating or whatever? Because y'all missed one heck of a lesson on retirement. And it was so important that I had to review a little bit with you, because in order to lead into what we're getting into today, I think you need a little bit of the backdrop on retirement. Yesterday we looked at time and money, and if you notice up there, 9%. So this is a 9% interest-bearing account over a long period of time, 30, 35 years at $100. You see you have a nice little nest egg at the end, right? Now, 9%, are you going to earn that in a savings account? No. As a matter of fact, this is the back page of the Florida Times-Union, a full one-page ad. And I want you to look really close. 0.9%. Now, they call it high yield, exactly. I had to round up to 1% because the website doesn't take 0.9, okay? So at 1%, your savings are $50,305. And when you compare the two, you look at that and you go, wow, 1% versus 9, the same $100 a month over 35 years, you see the difference. So those of you that missed yesterday, that's what you missed, okay? And then we look back at that ad, and this is what our society, they see these topics, these titles, and they go, wow, make my dreams take flight, high yield. And trust me, is 0.9 high yield for a savings account? Yes. If you can find one, my students this week could not find one anywhere. 0.95 was the best at Ally Bank. And you see the word secure, it's secure. The problem is, does it secure your future? No, if your future's Happy Meals or whatever off the value menu, you're fine, but outside of that, you're in trouble. So at the end of the lesson, some of you came up to me and you said, Professor, forget about retirement. I'm 20, 25, I got young kids, I gotta look at my kids. So how many of you have young kids? Less than 5, oh, several of you, yeah. You're not thinking about your own retirement, you're thinking about your kids' education. So you've got a choice. You know, You Promise is one of those ways to save. Or if you're thinking, I don't have 2 extra pennies, buy the little toy army soldiers, give them to your kids and pray they go military because they'll pay for their education, right? Right now, psychology begins. So ultimately, what are our goals today in this lesson? Well, it's to basically model the cost of higher education in Florida. We have already studied linear regression, quadratic regression, and cubic regression. And these are ways in which you take data, you graph it, and then you find what we call a function of best fit so we can estimate the future cost. That's our goal with all this math right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to specifically focus on the University of Florida and try to look 15 years, just 15 years from now, what is it going to cost at the University of Florida, okay? And then as an extension, the goal of all these lessons is to get all students thinking of their personal finance plan. Don't stay within the context of college algebra. Get out there and make them think, what are my future financial goals going to be, with kids or without? Okay, so we got to review, because I realize, well, raise your hand. Actually, raise your calculator if you brought it today. How many of you have your TI graphing calculator? No, the smartphones don't work. Great job. No, they don't graph. You can? You loaded it? Oh, wow. Wow. That is wonderful. Okay, so my mathematicians in here, which all of you are because you're in college algebra, which function is the best fitting function on this graph? Anybody want to take a guess? Linear. Very good. How about this one? Quadratic. Yes, it has a kind of a U shape. Quadratic functions are U shapes, tend to have one concave area. All right, and then the last one you can probably figure out by the process of elimination. Cubic. You are an outstanding class. I love this class. All right, so cubics tend to have a rise and a fall and then another rise, or in reverse based on their function, okay? So ultimately, what is our goal? Well, we're trying to look at the future cost of education at the University of Florida or any state institution. Now, some of you that have numerophobia, you're looking at this going, holy cow, I'm running. Don't go to the doors, don't pass out in your chair, just focus on these numbers right here, okay? These are the last 10 years of the University of Florida, and specifically you're looking at tuition right here. Now, there is some hope. The last 2 years, what? Didn't rise. You're thinking, oh my gosh, this is great. Bad economy, tuition's not going up. So What do we have to do first? In order to apply one of those three models, what do you think we have to do with the data? We got to graph it. You can't really put a function over the data until you see it. So what I've done is I've taken those last 10 years and I've what's called aligned the data. So there's your years, and now we've aligned it. These are going to be our X values for these years. Remember 2012 at 9. And then there's our tuition. Okay, when we graph it, we get this. Now, which function are you going to go with? Linear, quadratic? What'd you say? Linear. Absolutely. Very good. Now, we can argue, mathematicians will argue, oh, I can get a better function than that. Linear is the best approach on this one. And there's your line of best fit. So there's your function. Now, the question is, for those of you that have been at the university level, is tuition your true cost of education at the University of Florida? No. No. Some of you might go, well, what do you mean? Well, when you look at this spreadsheet, you see all these fees, and the question is, are all these fees part of the tuition? They're not actually part of the tuition. They're in addition to the tuition. Now, if you come out of Florida State College at Jacksonville, you go to the website, it's pretty straightforward. $103 roughly per credit hour with some additional fees per class. Okay. Go to Tallahassee, $98.83. I mean, this is a snapshot of their website. Is it any more clear than that? I don't think so. Go to Miami-Dade. Hey, you've got some extra fees, but the bottom line is when you look at the total, we're all within $13 of each other. It's not bad, okay? The problem is you go to the University of Florida and you can't get that page. This is the page you get. And you look at the top and it says tuition and fees, $6,170. You go, wait a second, where'd they get that number from? And then they put all this other stuff. Well, see this total column over here, and I've highlighted it. You've got two ways to come up with that total. I thought at first that you just take tuition times 30, because they're assuming that an average student takes 30 credit hours per year. That's not the case. Tuition times 30 is half that number. Okay? You have to add up all the columns, or you just simply take the 30 column and divide by 30. Now, I did that for all the state universities, or actually these 7, and the startling reality is this. Tuition is now accounting for only 50% of the actual cost that the student pays per credit hour. Mind-boggling. Only FAMU is really above 50%. The rest of them are now inching downward. And if you think the trend is good, look, going back to 1978, tuition has never, ever accounted for 100%. While it does at some of our student-friendly state and community colleges, it does not at the universities at all. In 78, tuition was 86%. 2003, it's down to 68, and today it's 50.5. You tell me that trend. Now, student hears on the TV, tuition did not go up this year at the University of Florida. And you're thinking, all right, man, hey, bright futures, we're in there, everything's good, and then you get that number, and you go, uh-oh. Only once, and we're going to call it real tuition. That's tuition plus fees, because that's really what they're paying. And you notice there's no line item in that spreadsheet for what we call real tuition. Real tuition has remained the same only once, and surprisingly, it went down one year at the University of South Florida by 40 cents. Divide that by 30. Divide that by 30 and tell me what your net gain was per credit hour. It is shocking, absolutely shocking. That's right. That's right. So here's the real cost. The real cost, I took the 30 column, divided it. So here's what you're really paying for the last 10 years, University of Florida. Remember our tuition right now is $103.32? So double it if you want the real cost on average. And you notice there has been an increase. It has gone up. So we need to model this. There's our model. So does this graph look linear now? No. All right, who's going to tell me? You got a choice, quadratic or cubic, because we haven't gone into the other functions yet. Quadratic. I knew this class was my A class. I didn't know why, I just knew it. You are correct. Now, those of you that thought linear, that's the line. Now, it's kind of like jeans. All right, some of you are familiar with the fad today that people like to wear jeans that fit their curves. You know where I'm coming from? Not us. We're professional faculty. We're not putting anything on our curves. But that does not fit our curve, okay? That fits our curve. What is that function? There's your quadratic function right there. Okay? Now, we haven't answered the question. We've applied the concept to something that connects with us, but we haven't answered the question, the cost. We need to figure out what it's going to cost in 2027. Now, remember I told...
Exponential increase.
There is an exponential increase. That is absolutely right. It is brutal. And I know you're waiting like, just click, click. No, I got to hold you off for a second. Remember I said at x equals 9, that's this year. So we've got to go to x equals 24. That's 15 years, all right? 15 plus 9. When you look at that on the screen, $912. Look to the right, $912.39. Okay? Now, some of you, real quick, some of you, I know none of you brought your graphing calculators except for my iPhone app. Outstanding. All of your notes are right there in your hands for how all these functions were derived on the calculator. So if you do teach math, you have the exact calculator commands to get to this point. So here we are, $912 per credit hour. So you want to tell me the cost without using your iPhone right now? What is the total cost for 30 credit hours? Very good. $27,000.
And that's not food or shelter.
That's right.
Or laptop or books.
You got it. Yeah, who knows what a book will cost? Because as books are used less, e-books are used more, they jack up all the fees. So here's the key. You must analyze your data when you use regression. You don't just simply say, oh, it's quadratic, there's my future, and I'm done. You can't do that. All right? You have to go back, and you have to use some common sense, and you have to think of trends. So let's analyze. Right now, this is what it costs University of Florida. So a lot of students think, so it's going to cost $27,000? Well, look at the last 2 years. This is what it's gone up, 21%. How many of you got a raise of 10%?
How many of you
5?
raised? You could have just stopped there.
One of my bosses is in the back row. I'm not going to say any comments to this. 3 years, 36%. Holy cow. So is our model somewhat a good one? What do you think? I think it could be, but can times change? Yes, we know that. In summary, no model can perfectly predict. It's called extrapolating. It's taking this function and extrapolating into the future. We don't know the future. I mean, you can ask somebody from Greece, somebody from Spain right now, 10 years ago what they thought of their economy and what they're going through today, and say they did not have any idea what was going to happen. Obviously, we've gone from the technology crash of the 80s to incredible growth in the 90s and year 2000, and here we are. Start saving now. Time is money. We got to connect it back to that retirement lesson. Time is money. All right? If you don't start now, if you wait till they're 10 or 12, the amount of money you got to put in is too much. You're not going to make it. If you currently have this benefit, this is for my specific audience here, you really need to count on this benefit. Don't quit your job. I mean, that is an unsung benefit to those of us that have young kids. And if you're at a state school with 4-year degrees, even better, right? Even better. I mean, if your kid chooses the 4-year degree that your school offers and it's a limited number, you're in good shape. And last but not least, there's always the GI Bill. Thank you very much, you all.